They said miracles don't happen twice in one lifetime. But when the doors of her small bakery swung open that winter morning, and a tall man in a tailored suit stepped in with eyes full of tears, Mary realized she was about to witness one. She didn't recognize him at first. But when he spoke, "You once gave me bread when the world gave me nothing," her heart stopped. Because 20 years ago, she had saved a starving boy. And now he had returned as a billionaire. The snow fell thick and merciless on the small town of Greenwood. The streets were empty. Everyone was home, wrapped in blankets, waiting out the storm. Everyone except a shivering boy, no older than 10, crouched behind a garbage bin outside Mary's bakery. He was skin and bone, his lips pale, hands trembling, clutching his empty stomach. His name was Ethan. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His mother had died months ago, and his father, a man consumed by drink, had disappeared soon after. Ethan had wandered ever since, sleeping in bus stops, stealing glances into bakery windows but never daring to go in. That morning, as the smell of fresh bread spilled through the cold air, Ethan couldn't fight it anymore. He staggered toward the door and pressed his face against the glass. Inside, Mary, a widow in her late 30s, was arranging loaves for the morning rush that never really came. Her bakery was small, her debts large, and customers few, but she smiled anyway. When she saw the boy outside, she hesitated. Many in town turned away from the homeless children. "They'll just cause trouble," people would say. But Mary saw something else, the same hunger her late husband used to hide before their bakery made its first coin. She opened the door. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Ethan froze. No one had called him that in months. He nodded silently. Mary ushered him in, sat him by the heater, and placed a warm loaf and hot chocolate in front of him. Ethan stared in disbelief, then devoured the food, tears mixing with the steam from his drink. "You don't have to pay," Mary said, smiling when he looked up. "Just promise me one thing: when you're older, help someone else who's hungry." He nodded fiercely. "I will, I promise." For the next few weeks, Ethan came by whenever he could. Mary gave him leftovers, let him sweep the floor, even taught him how to knead dough. He began calling her Miss Mary, and for a while the bakery echoed with laughter again. But one morning he didn't come. Days turned into weeks. Mary searched the alleys, asked around, but Ethan had vanished. Some said a social worker took him to a shelter in the city. Others whispered darker things. Mary never found out. Years passed. Mary's bakery limped on, burdened by rising rent and fewer customers. The town grew modern, chain cafes arrived, and Mary's warm bread and old charm were forgotten. But she stayed, because every time she thought of giving up, she remembered that hungry boy who smiled again because of her bread. Sometimes she wondered where he was. If he remembered her. If he ever kept his promise. It was 20 years later. Mary's hair had turned silver, her hands rough from decades of work. The bakery was nearly empty, just one wooden table, a few dusty shelves, and her old cash register. The landlord had given her notice. She had 1 month left before eviction. It was the first day of winter again, the same biting cold that once carried a starving boy to her door. She was kneading dough when the doorbell chimed. A man entered, tall, well-dressed, and silent. His black coat dripped melted snow, and his eyes wandered around the bakery as if searching for something lost. He finally looked at her, and for a long time he didn't speak. Mary smiled weakly. "Can I help you, sir?" The man's lips trembled. You already did." Mary frowned in confusion. He took off his gloves, reached into his coat, and pulled out an old, yellowed paper, a receipt from her bakery. The ink was faded, but at the bottom was her handwriting. "1 loaf paid with a promise." Tears filled her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered. He nodded, his voice breaking. "You saved my life, Miss Mary." She covered her mouth, stunned. Ethan took a deep breath. After you fed me, a shelter found me. I was adopted, got a scholarship, started a tech company in college, and it grew. Today, I own dozens of companies, but nothing compares to what you gave me when I had nothing. Hope. Mary's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Ethan, look at you. He smiled. I made a promise, and I never forgot it. He reached into his coat again and pulled out a folder, legal papers. This bakery, it's yours forever. The building, the land, paid off. And I'm opening a foundation in your name, Mary's Bread of Hope, to feed every hungry child in this city. Mary's knees nearly gave way. Ethan, I don't know what to say. He stepped forward, his eyes soft. Say you'll keep baking, because every loaf you make will remind a child that someone cares. Mary hugged him, her tears soaking his coat. Outside, snow began to fall again, but this time it didn't feel cold. That night the bakery lights glowed brighter than they had in years. Children from nearby shelters came in, laughing as Mary handed them bread and cocoa. And standing quietly in the corner, Ethan watched, a man who once had nothing, now giving everything back. When the camera pans out, the final shot, the old sign above the bakery flickers with new paint. Mary's Bread of Hope, established by kindness, renewed by promise. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness plants a seed that grows beyond imagination. Mary gave a boy bread, and he gave the world hope.